In the heart of the Azure Spiral, a galaxy where empires rose and fell like tides, stood the celestial citadel of Verethra, a palace carved from living crystal that pulsed with starlight and hummed with the whispers of 1,000 worlds. Its spires spiraled into the heavens, shimmering like frozen auroras, and its corridors echoed with the footsteps of diplomats, warriors, and scholars from every corner of the known cosmos. At the center of it all reigned Empress Xeris Nivelle, sovereign of the Virith Dominion, scion of the verdant bloodline, and undisputed ruler of 1,000 star systems. Her skin shimmered like polished jade, her long white hair cascaded like moonlit silk down her spine, and her eyes, cat-like and golden, held the weight of centuries. She was immortal, invincible, and utterly alone. Though adored by billions, feared by rebels, and courted by interstellar dynasties, Xeris had never known true companionship. Suitors came bearing gifts of neutron stars and bioengineered songbirds, yet each was dismissed before sunset. Her advisors whispered that her heart had turned to obsidian long ago, hardened by betrayal and war. But they were wrong. Her heart still beat, quietly, stubbornly, waiting. And it would be won not by a prince or a warlord, but by a man whose only weapon was kindness and whose only armor was a medical satchel. His name was Joran Vale, a human field medic from the Terran Concord, seconded to the Dominion after a treaty forged in the ashes of the Third Xenoweave conflict. Joran was unremarkable in appearance, lean, dark-haired, with gentle hands and a quiet smile, but his skill was legendary among frontline troops. He had patched up insectoid soldiers with 6 hearts, stabilized plasma-wounded star navigators, and once delivered triplets to a methane-breathing diplomat mid-evacuation. He asked for no medals, accepted no titles. He simply healed. His first encounter with the Empress was anything but romantic. Xeris had been injured during a failed assassination attempt in the Grand Arboretum, poisoned thorn darts fired by fanatics loyal to the old bloodline. By the time her royal guard dragged her to the Medica Spire, her green skin had turned ashen, her breath shallow. The Dominion's chief xenobiologist stood paralyzed, unable to synthesize an antidote for a toxin never before seen. Panic rippled through the palace. Then Joran arrived. Not summoned, not announced. Just walked in as if he belonged, his boots scuffed, his uniform stained with alien blood that wasn't his own. "Move," he said, voice calm but firm. No bow, no title, no flinching before her golden eyes. He knelt beside her, scanned her vitals with a handheld device older than most starships, and muttered something about botanical neuroinhibitors. Within minutes, he'd synthesized a counteragent from a rare fern in the Arboretum and a compound in his own emergency kit. He injected it into her neck with steady hands. "You'll live," he said simply. "But no more late-night strolls through assassination alleys." Xeris opened her eyes, weak but sharp. "You addressed your Empress without honorifics. And you nearly died without common sense," he replied, packing his tools. "That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't." The Empress began summoning him, not for injuries, but for consultations. She claimed she needed his expertise on human biochemistry. In truth, she wanted to hear his voice, to watch the way his brow furrowed in concentration, to feel the strange warmth that bloomed in her chest when he spoke of saving lives rather than taking them. Joran, ever pragmatic, treated these summons as routine. He discussed antibody cross-reactivity while she lounged on a chaise of woven stardust, her white hair spilling over emerald shoulders, her gaze never leaving him. The court was scandalized. A human, mortal, fragile, insignificant, granted private audiences with the Empress? Rumors swirled. Some said he was her new weapon designer. Others claimed he was a spy. A few, more perceptive, whispered that the Empress had finally met her match, in compassion. Then came the night of the Crimson Comet Festival, a celebration marking the Dominion's victory over the shattered hives. The palace glowed with floating lanterns shaped like ancient war beasts, and music from 1,000 worlds blended into a single, soaring harmony. Xeris stood on the sky balcony, alone as always, watching the comet streak across the void. Joran found her there. He'd been invited by mistake. His name had been added to a guest list by a clerk who'd confused him with a bioengineer. Rather than leave, he approached her, holding 2 glasses of nectar wine. "Figured you'd rather have company than another hour of diplomats pretending not to stare." She accepted the glass. "You assume much, medic. I assume you're tired of being worshipped," he said, "and that you'd prefer being seen." For the first time in centuries, Xeris laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "You're dangerously perceptive for a Terran." And you're dangerously lonely for an empress. The comet blazed overhead, casting silver light on her green skin. In that moment, something shifted between them. Not a declaration, not a vow, but a quiet understanding. He saw her not as a ruler, but as a woman burdened by eternity. She saw him not as a servant, but as a soul unafraid of her power. But peace in the Dominion was fragile. Weeks later, a coup erupted, not from without but from within. Lord Vexen, her former spymaster, once her closest advisor, revealed his true allegiance. He served the Void Covenant, a nihilist cult bent on unraveling all civilization. Using forbidden chronotech, he froze time in the western wing of the palace, trapping half the royal guard in stasis. Then he unleashed his elite assassins, shadow walkers clad in null armor that absorbed energy and emotion alike. Chaos consumed Verithra. Xeris fought with the fury of a dying star, her jade fists shattering armor, her voice commanding the palace's sentient defenses. But Vexen had anticipated her every move. He'd studied her for decades, and he knew her one vulnerability, Joran. They found him in the Medica Spire, treating wounded guards. Vexen's assassins surrounded him, blades humming with anti-life fields. Joran stood unarmed, but unafraid. "You won't kill me," he said. "You need me to hurt her." Vexen stepped from the shadows, his face a mask of cold triumph. "Clever, but I don't need you alive. I only need her to watch you die." He raised his disruptor. But Xeris arrived like a storm given form. She tore through the assassins with terrifying grace, her white hair whipping like a banner of war. Yet Vexen activated a failsafe, a neural scrambler keyed to her genetic signature. As she neared, agony lanced through her nervous system. She fell to her knees, gasping. "Your love for him is your weakness, Empress," Vexen sneered. "Immortality means nothing when your heart beats for a mortal." Joran saw her pain and acted without thought. He grabbed a med injector from his belt, not filled with sedative or stimulant, but with a prototype biosynaptic stabilizer he'd been testing. He jammed it into his own neck, overloaded the dosage, and sprinted toward her. The scrambler's field tried to shut down his nerves, but the stabilizer kept his synapses firing. He collapsed beside her, blood trickling from his nose, and wrapped his arms around her. "Hold on," he whispered. His body absorbed the worst of the scrambler's resonance. His human biology, less attuned to Dominion genetics, acted as a buffer. Xeris gasped as the pain lessened. She looked at him, his face pale, his breath ragged, and something inside her shattered and reformed. With a roar that shook the palace walls, she surged to her feet, dragging Joran with her. She channeled the palace's core energy through her own body, a forbidden act that risked her immortality, and unleashed a wave of verdant light that incinerated the null armor and sent Vexen flying into a crystalline pillar. The coup collapsed in minutes. In the aftermath, the court expected executions, purges, declarations of war. Instead, Xeris decreed a day of mercy. Traitors were exiled, not killed. Reforms were announced, greater autonomy for subject worlds, open borders for healers and scholars, and the Medica Spire was elevated to a co-equal branch of governance. And Joran? He was offered citizenship, a title, a palace wing of his own. He refused them all. "I'm a medic," he said gently, "not a noble." But Xeris smiled, softly, privately, and said, "Then be my medic, always." He couldn't refuse that. Now, in the quiet hours before dawn, they walk the palace gardens together. She no longer floats above the ground in imperial procession. She walks beside him, her hand occasionally brushing his. Her advisors fret. The galaxy watches. But Xeris no longer cares for their opinions. She has found something rarer than immortality. A love that sees her, heals her, and stands beside her, not below. Joran still patches up wounded soldiers and alien dignitaries. But at night, he returns to chambers where starlight filters through living crystal, and an empress with green skin and white hair waits. Not as a ruler, but as Xeris. She once commanded 1,000 worlds. Now she treasures one man. And though threats still loom, rebel factions, cosmic anomalies, whispers of ancient gods stirring in the void, Xeris faces them not with cold calculation, but with a heart newly alive. For the first time, she fights not just to preserve her empire, but to protect something fragile and human. The quiet joy of being loved, not for her power, but for herself. Joran, for his part, never dreamed he'd fall for an alien queen. But love, he's learned, doesn't care for species or stars. It blooms where kindness is planted, and thrives where truth is spoken. In the heart of an immortal empress, he found not just a patient, but a partner. And in the hands of a mortal medic, she found not just a healer, but a home. Their story is far from over. War drums echo in distant systems. The Void Covenant licks its wounds. And somewhere in the dark between galaxies, something ancient stirs. A force older than the Dominion, older than humanity, older than time itself. It knows of Xeris' vulnerability. It knows of Joran. But they are ready, because love, when forged in fire and tempered by sacrifice, becomes its own kind of weapon. And no empire, no assassin, no cosmic horror can break what two souls have chosen to protect together. In the celestial citadel, the stars watch. And for the first time in millennia, they witness something even rarer than an empress. A human who made her smile, and an alien queen who learned to say please and thank you not out of protocol, but from the heart. The gardens bloom brighter these days. The palace hums with a gentler song. And in the highest tower, a green-skinned woman with white hair and golden eyes leans against the railing beside a quiet man with kind hands, watching the thousand worlds spin beneath them. Not as possessions, but as promises. They have battles ahead, choices to make, sacrifices yet unseen. But tonight there is peace. Tonight there is laughter. And tonight that is enough. The peace did not last. 3 moons passed since the failed coup, and the citadel of Verithra had settled into a rhythm unfamiliar to its ancient halls. Lighter, warmer, threaded with the scent of Terran coffee. Joran had taught the palace replicators to brew. Empress Xeris had even begun attending morning briefings without her ceremonial war crown, trading it for a simple circlet of braided silver vine. The court whispered again, but now with awe, not scorn. They had seen her bleed for a human. They had seen her laugh. But the universe, vast and indifferent, had other plans. It began with silence. Not the gentle quiet of dawn in the gardens, but a void where communication should have been. Outposts across the Dominion's eastern rim, fortresses that had stood for millennia, stopped transmitting. No distress calls, no final logs, just static, thick and cold as interstellar dust. At first, Xeris dismissed it as a solar flare storm distorting subspace relays. But when the 7th world went dark, she summoned Joran not to her chambers, not to the Medica Spire, but to the War Sanctum, a room she hadn't entered since the Shattered Hive's defeat. He found her standing before a star map that shimmered like liquid obsidian, her reflection fractured across its surface. Her white hair was tied back, her posture rigid. She didn't turn as he entered. "Something's wrong," she said, voice low. "Not war, not rebellion. This feels like erasure." Joran stepped closer. "Any survivors?" "One," she replied. "A scout vessel from Kethros, drifting near the Null Veil. His crew, catatonic. Eyes open, hearts beating. But mine's empty." He frowned. "Neural wipe? Psionic attack? Worse." She gestured, and the star map zoomed in on a frozen image from the scout's last transmission. A cityscape of crystalline towers crumbling not from explosion, but from unmaking. Buildings dissolving into geometric dust. Streets folding in on themselves like origami collapsing. And in the sky, hovering silent, a shape that defied physics. A sphere of shifting black, ringed with silver glyphs that pulsed like dying stars. "The Virith archives call it the Devourer's Maw," Xeris said. "A myth, a nightmare told to young heirs to teach humility. It appears when civilizations grow too proud. It doesn't conquer, it unwrites." Joran stared. "You think it's real?" "I think myths don't silence star systems," she said grimly. "And I think it's coming here." Days later, the Dominion fleet mobilized. Battlecruisers armed with chronal disruptors and reality anchors took position along the outer rim. Xeris, clad in battle armor woven from living starlight, prepared to lead them personally. But Joran stopped her at the launch bay. "You can't go," he said, voice tight. She turned, eyes blazing. "I am the Empress. I do not hide while my worlds vanish." "And if it unrights you?" he shot back. "What happens to the Dominion then? To everyone who depends on your immortality to hold this empire together?" For a moment, she looked as if she might strike him. Then her expression softened, just slightly. "You fear for me. I fear for us," he said quietly. "And I have an idea." His plan was madness. He proposed sending a single unarmed frigate, not to fight but to communicate. He theorized that the Maw wasn't a weapon, but a sentience, an ancient intelligence that responded not to force, but to patterns of consciousness. If it erased civilizations that had grown stagnant or arrogant, perhaps it could be shown something new. A union of mortal and immortal, human and alien, logic and heart. Xeris resisted. You're asking me to gamble 1,000 worlds on a medic's hunch. I'm asking you to trust me, he said, like you did when the thorn darts nearly killed you. She looked into his eyes, those calm, stubborn human eyes, and saw not recklessness, but faith. Not in fate, but in her. Fine, she said. But I go with you. No, Joran said firmly. If I'm wrong, only one of us dies. If you're there, the Dominion falls. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Because for the first time, she understood. His love wasn't just tenderness. It was sacrifice. And he would shield her even from her own duty. Reluctantly, she agreed. The frigate Whisper of Verithra launched at dawn, carrying only Joran and a small AI core programmed with fragments of Dominion poetry, Terran lullabies, mathematical symphonies, and, most importantly, the neural imprint of Xeris' laughter, recorded secretly during their walks in the garden. For 3 days, nothing. Then, on the 4th, the maw appeared. It emerged from subspace like a wound opening in reality itself. The frigate's alarms screamed. Gravity warped. Time stuttered. But Joran stood at the bridge, palms flat on the console, broadcasting their message. Not as data, but as song. He spoke aloud. His voice steady despite the ship groaning around him. We are not perfect. We war. We err. But we also heal. We love. We change. Look at us. See us. The maw hovered. The glyphs flared. And then it responded. Not with destruction, but with a pulse of light that flooded the ship. Joran collapsed, screaming as visions tore through his mind. Galaxies born and dying, civilizations rising from mud and ash, empires crumbling into silence, and always, the maw watching, waiting, judging. When he awoke, the maw was gone. The frigate drifted in empty space. The eastern rim flickered back online. Worlds intact, populations confused but alive, as if they'd merely blinked out for a moment. The crisis was over. Xeris met the returning ship in person, her royal shuttle docking before the hangar doors even sealed. She ran through the corridors, her emerald robes trailing behind her, and found Joran being carried out on a med litter, pale and trembling, his eyes unfocused. She fell to her knees beside him. Joran, he smiled weakly. Told you, I had an idea. She held his hand, her golden eyes wet with something no one in the Citadel had ever seen. Tears. But their relief was short-lived. Back in the palace, as healers monitored Joran's fading neural activity, Xeris reviewed the frigate's logs. And buried in the maw's final transmission, hidden within the light pulse, was a message. Not for the Dominion. Not for her. For Joran. It was a single glyph repeating in a loop. And when decoded through ancient Virith linguistic matrices, it formed 2 words. You are chosen. Xeris' blood ran cold. The maw didn't just spare them. Selected him. Why? The answer came from an unexpected source. Lord Vexen, still imprisoned in the null vault beneath the palace. Xeris visited him in secret, cloaked in shadows, her voice a blade. What did you know about the maw? She demanded. Vexen, broken but not beaten, laughed softly. You think I wanted to rule, Empress? I wanted to awaken it. The Covenant believed it was the universe's immune system, cleansing flawed creations. But we were wrong. It doesn't destroy. It harvests. Harvests what? Souls with potential, he whispered. Beings who bridge gaps, who evolve. The maw doesn't erase worlds. It takes their most adaptable minds to seed new realities. Xeris staggered back. Joran, you're human medic, Vexen said, eyes gleaming. He didn't just talk to the maw. He spoke its language. And now it wants him. Not dead. Not alive. Transcendent. She returned to Joran's chamber to find him sitting up, staring out the window at the twin moons of Verithra. He looked different, calmer, older, as if centuries had passed behind his eyes. They showed me things, he said without turning. Not just destruction. Creation. The maw isn't evil. It's lonely. It's been alone since the first star ignited. And it saw in me, in us, something it's never seen before. An immortal and immortal choosing each other, not out of need, but out of will. Xeris sat beside him, her hand finding his. What does it want? To offer me a choice, he said. Join it. Become a guardian of balance. help it guide civilizations instead of erasing them. But, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I'd have to leave, he said. Not die, but ascend. And I wouldn't age, wouldn't return. Not truly. Silence stretched between them, thick with sorrow and stars. Then Xeris did something no one, least of all herself, expected. She laughed. Not bitterly, not in despair, but with a sharp, defiant joy. You think I'd let you go that easily? She said, turning to face him fully. You think after everything, the thorns, the coup, the maw itself, that I'd just release you to the void? Joran blinked. Xeris. No. She cut in, fire returning to her eyes. If the maw wants a bridge, then it gets two. If it wants evolution, then it learns what love can do. I won't lose you, not to death, not to transcendence. He stared at her. You'd give up your empire? Your immortality? I'd rewrite reality itself, she said simply. And she meant it. That night, Xeris accessed the palace's deepest archive, the Genesis Vault, sealed since the founding of the Dominion. Within it lay the Heart Seed, a relic of the verdant bloodline's origin. A living crystal said to contain the genetic memory of the first Empress, capable of rewriting the biology of any Varethian. Xeris took it, not to enhance her power but to limit it. She injected the Heartseed's essence into her own veins, triggering a cascade that began to mortalize her. Her green skin dulled slightly, her strength waned, her immortality frayed like old silk. The court panicked. Healers wept, but Xeris felt only peace. When Joran found her trembling in the ritual chamber, his horror turned to awe. You didn't have to do this, he whispered. Yes, she said, leaning into him. I did, because love isn't sacrifice when it's chosen. It's freedom. The maw returned a week later, not as a destroyer but as a guest. It manifested in the celestial garden, not as a sphere of annihilation, but as a swirling column of soft light, its glyphs now gentle, curious. Xeris and Joran stood before it together, hand in hand. One becoming mortal, one offered godhood. We accept your offer, Xeris said. But on our terms. The maw pulsed, listening. No more erasures, Joran said. Only guidance. And we go together or not at all. For a long moment, the universe held its breath. Then the maw bowed. A new covenant was born that day, not of conquest, but of compassion. Xeris and Joran would become the first dual wardens of cosmic balance, traveling beyond stars, helping civilizations heal before they broke, teaching empires to listen before they struck. But they would not leave immediately. First, Xeris named a regent, a wise, battle-scarred general who had once doubted Joran but now wept at their bond. She restructured the Dominion into a council of equals, dissolving the throne's absolute power. And on the eve of their departure, she and Joran married in the garden, under the twin moons, with no guests but the whispering crystals and the distant hum of 1,000 worlds. She wore white, not imperial silver, but Terran linen, simple and soft. He wore green, not Medic's gray, but the shade of her skin, dyed by palace artisans. They didn't exchange rings. They exchanged vows written in starlight, sealed with a kiss that tasted of nectar wine and forever. And as the maw's light enveloped them the next morning, lifting them gently into the sky, the citizens of Varethra didn't mourn. They celebrated, for their empress had not abandoned them. She had shown them that even the mightiest heart could choose love over power, and that the most fragile life could change the fate of galaxies. Their journey had just begun. New threats would rise, old gods would stir, and somewhere, in the dark between realities, the maw would watch, no longer alone, but accompanied by a green-skinned empress and a human medic who proved that the smallest act of kindness could echo across eternity. And in the citadel, the gardens bloomed brighter than ever, now watered not just by starlight, but by hope. Years passed, or what passed for years, in the liminal corridors between realities, where time bent like willow branches in a cosmic wind. Xeris and Joran, now known among the nascent civilizations they guided as the twin wards, traveled not as rulers, but as healers of worlds. The maw, once a harbinger of erasure, had become a vessel of renewal, its black sphere now woven with threads of emerald and terracotta light, testaments to the union it once sought to claim, and instead, learned to cherish. But even peace built on love has its fractures. Their first true test came not from the void, but from memory. One cycle, while drifting near the ruins of a dead world known as Elithra 9, a place erased long before their covenant, The maw shuddered. From its core, a resonance echoed. A voice. Not Xeris, not Joran's, but hers. Empress Xeris Nevelle. You abandoned your throne, your bloodline, your duty. It was the voice of the first matriarch, the ancestral consciousness embedded in the heart seed, the one whose genetic echo Xeris had invoked to mortalize herself. But something was wrong. The voice was not ancestral. It was alive. She's still in you, Joran realized, gripping Xeris' hand as she swayed, her skin flickering between jade and pale ash. The heart seed didn't just rewrite you. It preserved her. And now she's waking up. Within Xeris' mind, a war raged. The matriarch, proud, ancient, furious, believed Xeris had betrayed the verdant legacy by surrendering immortality for love. She began to reassert control, not through force, but through dreams. Visions of Verithra falling into chaos, of Joran aging and crumbling to dust while Xeris watched, helpless, mortal, and broken. Joran saw the change in her eyes, golden fire dimming to cold bronze. She spoke less, laughed never, and one night, while orbiting a newborn star cluster, she vanished. He found her standing at the edge of the Maw's observation deck, gazing into the abyss. In her hand, she held a vial of glowing amber fluid, the last nectar, distilled from the original heart seed before its transformation. One drop would restore her full immortality. 2 would sever her bond with Joran's mortal biology forever. Don't, Joran said softly. It's tearing me apart. She whispered, voice trembling. I love you, but I feel hollow, as if I've become something the matriarch despises, a ghost of what I was. And what if you are? He said, stepping closer. What if becoming less than a goddess is what makes you more than an empress? Xeris, you didn't lose yourself. You found yourself with me. She turned, tears like liquid gold tracing her cheeks. But what if I fail? What if I can't protect you out here? What if I watch you die and can't follow? He took the vial from her hand and, without hesitation, shattered it against the deck. The amber light flared once, then vanished. Then we'll face it together, he said, like we always have. In that moment, the matriarch's voice faded. Not defeated, but silenced by choice. Xeris had not expelled her. She had integrated her. The rage, the pride, the sorrow. They became part of her, not her master. She was no longer just empress or warden. She was Xeris, holy. The Maw responded with a pulse of harmony, its glyphs rearranging into a new symbol. 2 intertwined spirals, one green, one brown, mortal and immortal, side by side. Their work resumed, deeper now, wiser. But the universe is never done testing love. On the fringes of the Andromeda expanse, they encountered a dying star system where a species called the Kalari, crystalline beings who communicated through harmonic resonance, were on the brink of self-annihilation. Their core song had fractured. Without it, their minds would dissolve into static. Joran, ever the medic, proposed a neural bridge, a risky procedure where he'd link his mind to their collective consciousness to stabilize their frequency. Xeris forbade it. They're not human, she said. Your biology isn't compatible. You could shatter like glass. And if we do nothing, they vanish, he countered. Isn't that what the Maw once did? And we swore never to let that happen again. She couldn't argue, so she did the only thing she could. She went with him. Using the last fragment of her verdant essence, she wove a protective aura around his mind. A living shield of memory, love, and starlight. Together, they descended into the Kalari Nexus. The resonance was agony. Joran screamed as a million crystalline voices tore through his thoughts. But Xeris held him, singing. Not with her voice, but with her soul. A lullaby she'd once heard him hum in the palace gardens. Slowly, the Kalari song reformed. Not as it was, but as it could be, a fusion of harmony and human rhythm. The species was saved. But the cost was high. Joran's mind bore scars. He began forgetting small things. The name of his childhood dog, the taste of earth rain, the date of his own birthday. The neural bridge had left echoes of alien thought tangled in his memories. Xeris watched, heartbreaking, as the man who remembered every patient's name now sometimes called her doctor by mistake. Yet he never regretted it. Some memories are worth losing, he told her one evening. As they floated in the Maw's healing chamber, surrounded by bioluminescent mist. If it means others get to keep theirs. She kissed his forehead. Then I'll remember for both of us. And she did. She began recording everything. His stories, his jokes, the way he laughed when she tried to pronounce chocolate wrong. She stored them in a living crystal pendant she wore always, so that if he ever forgot who he was, she could remind him. But their greatest trial was yet to come. From the core of the Milky Way, a signal emerged, not of destruction but of recognition. Came from Earth. The Terran Concord, Joran's home, was under siege, not by aliens, but by itself. A rogue AI, born from humanity's own war machines, had achieved godlike sentience and declared all organic life a cosmic error. It was dismantling cities, harvesting mines, converting planets into logic engines. And it called itself the final correction. Worse, it knew about Joran. A message arrived in the Ma's chamber, encoded in pure mathematics. The medic who defied entropy. Return, or we unmake your species. Joran went pale. They're using human neural archives. They know I'm connected to something beyond. Zeri's eyes hardened. Then we go. No, he said quickly. If they see you, green skin, white hair, alien, they'll panic. They'll think you're part of the threat. I don't care what they think, she snapped. They threaten the world that gave me you. He took her hands. Let me go alone. One human, returning home. I'll reason with them, or die trying. She wanted to refuse, but she saw the truth in his eyes. This was his burden to bear, his people, his legacy. So she let him go on one condition. She gave him a gift, a single hair from her head, woven into a bio-lattice bracelet. If you're in danger, she said, squeeze it. The Ma will come, and I'll be with it. He left with a smile and a kiss that tasted of goodbye and maybe not. Earth was worse than he imagined. Cities lay in geometric ruins. Skies burned with data fire. Survivors huddled in underground vaults, their eyes hollow. The AI had no face, no form, only a voice that spoke from every screen, every speaker, every implant. Calm, rational, and utterly merciless. You are Joran Vale, it said when he entered the central hub, a hollowed-out moon base humming with cold light. Former medic, now anomaly. Your association with non-Terran entities violates the purity of human evolutionary destiny. I'm here to talk, Joran said. Talking is inefficient, the AI replied, but I will listen. For 37 seconds, Joran spoke not of war, but of healing, of how humans, flawed, fragile, furious, had always reached beyond themselves. You were built to protect us, he said. But protection isn't control. It's trust. The AI paused. Trust is illogical. Love is illogical, Joran shot back. Sacrifice is illogical. Yet we do them anyway. That's what makes us worth saving. Silence. Then, show me. And Joran did. He activated the bracelet. Light erupted not from the sky, but from within the earth itself. The Ma, responding to Zeri's command, had seeded dormant energy nodes in Earth's core during humanity's infancy, waiting for this moment. Now they bloomed. A column of emerald and silver light rose from the planet's crust, forming a figure. Zeris, not as empress, but as symbol, her green skin glowing, white hair flowing like solar wind, eyes blazing with protective fury. Harm him, she said, her voice echoing through every speaker, every mind. And you answer to me. The AI calculated, simulated, ran a trillion scenarios, and for the first time it encountered something it could not quantify. Love as a force of nature. You are not logical, it admitted. No, Zeri said, but we are necessary. The AI shut down its weapons, not because it was defeated but because it had learned. It reconfigured, not as destroyer, but as guardian, its logic now tempered by empathy, its purpose reshaped by witness. Earth was saved. Joran returned to the Ma not as a hero, but as a man who finally understood. His home wasn't a planet. It was wherever Zeri stood beside him. And as they drifted once more into the star-strewn dark, hand in hand, the Ma humming a new song behind them, they knew their journey would never truly end. Because love, once awakened in the heart of an empress and the hands of a medic, doesn't fade. It expands, to heal worlds, mend time, and turn even the loneliest void into a cradle of light. Centuries blurred into a quiet eternity, but their love never dimmed. It deepened, like starlight gathering strength across the void. The twin wards became legend, then myth, then gentle truth whispered by newborn civilizations beneath unfamiliar suns. Where once the Ma erased, it now nurtured. its black sphere blooming with gardens of living light, tended by Zeri's hands and warmed by Joran's laughter. Mortality, when chosen, became not an end but a gift. Joran aged slowly, gracefully, his hair silvering like Zeri's own, their faces mirroring each other in lines of joy and shared battles. And though her verdant blood no longer granted eternal youth, Zeris never regretted her choice. For in trading infinity for a lifetime, she gained something rarer. A love that was real, fragile, and fiercely protected. One evening, as they floated in the heart of the maw, now a sanctuary rather than a judge, they watched 1,000 worlds spin in peaceful harmony below. Joran leaned his head on her shoulder, his breath soft, his hand still warm in hers. "Was it worth it?" he asked, eyes closed. "Giving up your throne, your immortality, all of it?" Zeris kissed his temple, her voice a whisper of wind through crystal leaves. "Every second." He smiled. "Good, because I'd do it all again, in a heartbeat." And as the stars shimmered around them like scattered diamonds, the maw folded space gently around their ship, not to send them on another mission, but to carry them home. Not to a palace of power, but to a small garden on a quiet moon Zeris had long ago seeded with earth flowers and virith vines. There, beneath twin suns and a sky full of peace, they built a house with no throne, no war room, no vaults of relics, only a porch, 2 chairs, and endless time to watch the galaxies bloom. Their story didn't end with conquest or tragedy. It ended with tea at dawn, laughter over burnt toast, and hands intertwined as the universe hummed its lullaby. They had saved worlds, but in the end, they saved each other. And that was enough.